This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 573 for May 12th, 2019. Coming up on today's show. Should I live with my metamour? That's coming up on today's show. Greetings, Earthlings.
What the hell was that?
I thought I would try a different intro. I always say hello.
That is so funny. So I'm sitting here. You people don't quite understand. So the way we record the show, of course, there's no sound when we record the show. The music you hear, we don't hear. So Minx did the standard introduction to the show, which you heard at the top of the show. And in my mind, I was listening then to that guitar, right? And, yeah, exactly. And I'm listening to that, and I'm kind of grooving to that and thinking about that. And then she pops off with, "Hello, Earthlings." What the fuck?
And anybody new to the podcast is, my God, all they do is laugh and talk shit for the first 2 minutes. Next.
Yeah, exactly. I can just hear him go, "You two ain't as funny as you think you are. I know you think you're funny." No. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. So, hello, everyone. All right. We'll put a no for that particular introduction. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Minx, and with me in the co-host chair, obviously, is lustyguy today.
Happy and lucky to be here, as always.
I don't think we have anything fun in the announcements or host chat, but we do have some interesting Poly in the News items.
We do. It's been a very interesting Poly in the News kind of time.
The first one was in Rolling Stone, and the headline and subheadline are actually pretty promising. I did a couple of eye rolls during the article, but it's not really a bad article overall, I think. The headline is, "Who really practices polyamory?" Subhead, "For years it's been brushed off as a lifestyle for white liberals, but new research suggests ethical non-monogamists are much more diverse." Promising, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well, I think it kind of backs that up.
Yeah. The crux of the article is some new research from Dr. Rhonda Balzerini and her colleagues at the University of Western Ontario. And she published a paper in the Journal of Sex Research that said she was comparing the demographic backgrounds of 2,428 poly folks and 539 monogamous folks and asked them to take an online survey. And what they found out is that poly people tend to identify more as bisexual, pansexual. Big shock there. More likely to report being divorced and make less money yearly than monogamous couples.
Who knew?
Number 1 and 3, not surprising at all. The more likely to report being divorced, I kind of got my hackles up and I was like, okay, hold on. Is it more likely to report? Is it more likely to be divorced?
That's funny because I had the exact opposite.
Really?
So like the third one was the one that was surprising than me. I would have thought that, again, I kind of bought the standard knowledge that poly is for people with money. It's one of the things that gets said in the community a lot. And when I saw the result of the stat of the results, I was like, oh, that makes sense. And the middle one, more likely to report being divorced, totally makes sense too. Because if you're not stacking your relationships one after the other in serial monogamy, but instead letting them overlap, you'll have more relationships per unit time. More relationships per unit time is just going to result in more divorces.
Which is what they say later in the article, that it's not that there's a higher failure rate necessarily of this type of relationship. It's just that there are more relationships.
Right.
So there's more.
Which makes sense.
There's more potential. Yeah. So that really works. In fact, they say that with more relationship experiences, subsequently comes more breakups, which I thought makes a lot of sense.
It's like if you drive a lot. The more you drive, the more likely you're going to have an accident. Doesn't mean you're a bad driver.
About halfway through the article, I thought was really interesting. The study also revealed that men and women differ when it comes to how comfortable they are having an ethically non-monogamous relationship. Quote, "The most surprising finding was that women are overall more comfortable with the idea of non-monogamy than men," said Lecomte. "From a cultural standpoint, I did not expect those results." To which my response was, generally led by women.
Yeah, as somebody who lives in the lifestyle, I would have totally expected that result.
I did too, which is why I was like, oh, that's so cute. Bless her heart, or his heart. I'm not sure.
Did you just tell her to fuck off in Texan?
I did just tell that person to fuck off in Texan.
Oops.
So here's what's funny. Lecompte, and I apologize, I didn't get the first name, so I'm not sure of gender. We'll call it the generic they. Hypothesized, quote, maybe consensual non-monogamy is appealing to women as an ethical way to pursue other relationships. As it's so far been more culturally acceptable for men to cheat, maybe women desire novelty too, in order to keep their desire from dropping 1 to 4 years into a monogamous relationship. I'm like, well, duh.
Well, I think that it does confuse the issue of monogamy versus non-monogamy with novelty. That particular quote.
Yeah,
right?
that bugged me a little bit.
Yeah, she does. It doesn't have anything to do with novelty. But, I am sure that in terms of sexual attraction, it does. But sexual attraction is not the defining component of practicing polyamory, right? Or non-monogamy. So yeah, I kind of glazed with that. For me, the big important and cool thing about this was, hello, it's Rolling Stone. Mm-hmm. And it was also yet another example of the ongoing and growing studies being done looking at the practices of non-monogamy. And frankly, I think it's really cool that academia is focusing a little bit of time and attention trying to figure us out.
I know. I thought that was kind of cool too. The next article of interest was for those fans of Big Bang Theory. Apparently, Leonard's mom has been outed, or was mentioned that she was polyamorous on a recent episode of Big Bang Theory. Now, I didn't see the episode. I just looked at the Poly in the News encapsulation of it and with the dialogue. And what I like about the mention is that Leonard just throws it into a conversation that's not even about that, and then it's not discussed, and they just move on. So it's just like saying, oh, by the way, my mom is gay. Oh, by the way, my mom is, I don't know, an accountant. It's exactly what I was looking for when I gave a talk at Poly Living several years ago about, like, I want it to be so boring that it's not even the topic of conversation. You just say, she's this, and move on. Interestingly, though, when I posted this on the Polyweekly Facebook wall, all the comments were negative.
Negative? What would they be negative about?
Well, because Big Bang Theory has been critiqued, and I think rightly so, as
nerd blackface.
Nerd blackface, exactly. That basically everything about, nerds and geekiness and now presumably polyamory is just played for a laugh, which is not untrue, I think, but I still think this is sort of important as a mention of polyamory and having it not be a big deal.
Well, I don't watch TV, as you know, and so I don't watch.
And you
the
don't
show.
watch crappy TV like this.
And it's
not
crappy. I'm assuming it's popular
TV,
TV, right?
It's popular TV, and it's a sitcom, which
right.
in general you don't enjoy.
Does it have a laugh track?
Yes.
Yeah, can't watch it. Laugh tracks are
Wait,
evil.
Does it?
I don't know. That's why I asked you.
I can't remember. I'll have to go watch. But anyway.
Somebody out there can tell us. In any case, so in terms of the socio-political placement of this show and whether or not it is nerd blackface, I would have to say, having never seen it, of course it is. It's a mass popular show. By definition, it's going to be a caricature of whatever it is it's trying to depict to try to make it palatable to that mass audience. So, be that as it may, and I really don't know, in a mass show that is marketing to millions of people, and one of the most popular things on TV, the term polyamory is included as a throwaway. And
they don't define it. So the assumption is that people know what it is. That is kind of cool. That's
what being throwaway means. And as such, it has to be evidence of the fact that polyamory has entered the mass culture. I can't tell you about the show. The show probably sucks. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Now people are going to write in. That's lustyguy at polyweekly.com. Well, write in and tell him that it does or doesn't suck.
I'm also saying I haven't seen it and it's not my cup of tea. But for the evidence of the place polyamory has gained in our culture, it's certainly a relevant data point.
I feel like my work here is done.
Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out, right?
And our topic this week was a question from listener Olipoly, I like that nickname, about whether she should live with her metamour or not. And she asked, in general, is living with your metamour a good idea or a terrible idea? So I'm going to do my best to summarize the letter. It's a bit long. She writes in saying she's dating two people. Let's call them Apple, who is a he, and Pear, who identifies as she. Apple is dating Orange, which is she or they. I see Apple twice a week, and he sees Orange once a month. He sees other partners and play partners from time to time. Pear and Orange are not dating anyone else.
Once a week.
What'd I say? He sees Orange once a week. What did I say?
Month.
Okay, once a week. Thank you. Right. Okay. So she says everybody gets along together. And they're Harry Potter geeks, which I think is adorable. Yeah. And she just happened to mention that her roommate is leaving in May and she'll need to find somebody else, and that Orange seemed interested and maybe they could take on that room. Olipoly writes, I'm not living with either of my partners and don't wish to, so it wouldn't be like you and L. That means me and L, right? So she writes, I can think of positive points. I can think of negative points. What if one of us breaks up? What about hearing each other? Presumably, like having sex. But she says none of us are having sex with each other, but maybe some BDSM. I don't think I'd feel jealous, but what about them? Eek. She asks, I was curious to hear what you think about the situation. I've been talking for a long time. You should go.
But you've been doing so well. So, look, the simple answer to your question is, I don't know. What do you think? The two of you guys need to talk about it, or you theys, or folks. Whatever. Folks, there you go. Thank you. You two need to talk about it. And that list of questions that you had is a great place to start. While you're at it, talk about how you're going to pay the bills, how you're going to do the dishes, how you like your laundry done, whether or not there will be any pets, and all those mundane things about living together that you're going to have to discuss. If you're saying, the fact that we're metamours, should that mean we should not live together? No.
Not necessarily.
Not at all. What should mean you should not live together is the fact that one of you is an absolute carnivore and the other one is an absolute vegan that can't handle the idea of meat being cooked in the house. Probably shouldn't live together then. Look for those kind of things. Look for behavioral habitation issues that might conflict. Talk about everything that you can think about talking about together. Practice once or twice. Spend a weekend together before you actually have to move in. Yeah. Have them come over and crash for a weekend and see how it goes. Those are the things that are going to tell you whether or not you can live together a whole lot more than your poly relationship status.
Agreed. I don't think it's necessarily counterindicated. I agree with lustyguy that don't ask us, ask them. Talk to them about this, about how they would feel about it. And when I say they, I mean both your metamour and your partner, and see, kind of thoughts and feels, and, see if there are any concerns. And there are plenty of friends and former lovers and metamours that are roommates and make it work very well. But as lustyguy said, that's because they have good communication. They have living styles that work well together.
Now, one last put I will throw into this mix. As somebody who, for about 15, 20 years, lived in all kinds, 10 to 15 years, lived in all kinds of different communal situations, up to a literal commune on the top of a hill where we were moving refugees from Nicaragua in the late 80s on an underground railroad up into Canada. That one was fun. And having done that, I will say this. Living together with people who you are not having sex with, in my experience, works best when you bring a certain level of professionalism to it. Don't take anything for granted. Don't treat them like they're just a friend that you cannot talk to. Treat them like they're a client that you need to make and keep happy. Have regular meetings, write things down, make sure you own a dishwasher. It's the only solution I've ever seen to the problem of dishes and communal living that works. And be respectful and treat each other with a heightened degree of courtesy like you would in a professional relationship to make it work. And then have fun. That's
something I had on my advice list that I had forgotten to say, which is I think it's a great idea to set up weekly check-ins. Well, we talk about that anyway. Even if you're not going to do this, it's a great idea to set up weekly or at least regular check-ins with both your partner and your metamour. I mean, for me, my check-ins with my partner are every week, and with my metamour are more like every month or so, or just, when we all three happen to be together in the same place, or when Lustyguy's out and Elle and I happen to have time together, we'll do a check-in. But I think it's a good idea now to check what could the benefits be of living together with your metamour. What are the pitfalls? Does that person have any complaints that they've heard from other roommates that, they want to warn you about? And you're like, oh, that wouldn't bother me at all. Or, oh, yeah, that would be hard. Maybe not. And I'm the kind of person who always has an exit plan. So what happens if you talk about it, you think it's going to be okay, you decide to get polite and respectful and set up your check-ins, and what's the plan if it just doesn't work out? It's I think a good prenup is a great idea. I think it's a good idea to talk about that now. To say, what's the exit strategy for either or both of us if this doesn't work out?
I think that's very wise.
Yeah.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by friendly polyamorists everywhere.
This week's Happy Poly Moment is from Bunz in Knoxville, who said, I've been practicing poly with my husband since spring of 2017, so still fairly new, but we've both been the happiest we've ever been despite any stress or negative experiences we've encountered. I honestly never thought that I could be polyamorous. I had a very negative opinion about this type of relationship style due to meeting people who did not practice it ethically. You are not alone in that. Of course, before I did my research, I had a huge bias against it. She continues, sorry, it's a bit long, so I'm editing. My husband was actually poly before we met, but had been monogamous with me for 4 years. We worked together on writing exercises and reading before dating outside our marriage. Despite any ups and downs we faced, I feel as though we've been very successful. We've been able to work through our issues and communicate with each other better than we ever were able to when we were monogamous. We've even created a local polyamory meetup that's had a consistent attendance of about 20 to 30 members. Knoxville Polyamory Meetup on meetup.com. Little plug. We're also currently in a beautiful relationship. My husband has been dating a woman for almost half a year, and she and I get along great. She's not only a fun metamour, but I now consider her a friend. Anyway, I know this email's been long, but I think that if you put in the work that goes to wanting a poly relationship, even someone who staunchly believed in monogamy could find love, happiness, and a healthy outlook on life in polyamory.
Aww.
Isn't that a cute? I love that. I love that you started a meetup. Yay!
All right, and that brings us to our feedback. This is a letter from Mike, and he opens it up with a quote from me from one of our shows not too long ago.
Haha, he's picking on you.
Yeah, I'm used to it. That quote being, one of the things that really bothers me about this letter is that she is taking responsibility for his emotions. Hey, Minx and Lustyguy. I've been listening to your show for several months as my wife and I contemplate opening our marriage. Your latest episode really threw me. I'm actually in a similar situation to the writer that you were responding to. I feel the need for other partners. My wife does not. And she feels a lot of emotional pain around the idea of an open marriage. She's very supportive in validating my need for other partners, and is working very hard to manage her own emotions and to advocate for me to find the other partners that I need. Rationally, she knows that my desire for other partners does not diminish my deep love and commitment to her. But the small extent to which we have pushed the boundaries of our marriage, strip clubs, sexting, have caused her severe distress and anxiety. I believe that the kind of deep partnership that I want to maintain with her can only work if I share with her responsibility for her emotional needs, and vice versa. I don't know what that means for us since our deepest needs are in direct contradiction to each other. My earnest, even if polemic question for you, as people more experienced in polyamory than me is, do you think that polyamory can only work if each person puts their own needs first, taking only superficial responsibility for their partner's needs? Your response to that writer reminds me of Ayn Rand's famous oath of selfishness. I swear by my life and my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine. Yeah, I'm clearing the deck. Go ahead.
Very low blow, to quote Ayn Rand at us.
I mispronounced her name, didn't I?
I think I always mispronounce it. I've been told it's Ayn, not Ann. Yeah, but anyway.
It doesn't bother me, whatever.
Oh, good.
Okay, so here's the thing, Mike. Actually, the situations aren't that similar. The person that we were responding to, both people in that relationship wanted to have an open relationship. Only one of them was having difficulty doing so. In your situation, you want to have an open relationship, and it looks like your wife doesn't. I could be wrong about that. In fact, you say you feel a need for other partners. Your wife does not.
Right.
So I think the situations are a little different, but I'll also say that's really not the point of your letter and your question. The point of your letter and question, I think you accurately sum up. Do you think that polyamory can only work if each person puts their own needs first, taking only superficial responsibility for their partner's needs? I'm going to tell you that I think all relationships require us to put our needs first. But you are, when you talk then about a superficial responsibility, imposing a layer of absolutism and binaryism onto a situation that is actually much more fluid and dynamic and analog. It's not binary. So what do I mean by that? Well, you know when you're in the airplane and they tell you put your oxygen mask on first? They tell you that because your need for O2 is so great that if you don't meet it, you're not going to be able to help the person next to you meet their need for O2. So when you have a need that is so great that if you don't meet it, you're not going to be able to help, I didn't say take responsibility for, I said help your partner meet their needs. Yes, you're going to have to answer that one first. Now, it may not be around monogamy or non-monogamy. There are people for whom their need to be one or the other is not that great, and they're flexible, and they're with a partner who has a great need to be with one way or the other, and they can go that way. In essence, if my need is to get emergency care, and your need is for a particular flavor of ice cream, as a responsible adult in a loving relationship, I expect you to be able to delay your need for ice cream and answer my need for urgent care. So when we say you have to put your needs first, that's a shorthand way of saying you got to breathe oxygen first. You got to have urgent care first. When your needs are met to such an extent that you can then provide assistance to your partners in meeting their needs, you're doing things right. Should you provide that assistance? Absolutely. Does providing that assistance make you responsible? No, not the same. So it's a little finer parse than your question would seem to allow, because you're kind of doing an on-off. Either my need's more important or it's not. When the reality is, it varies by the severity of the need, the timing, and the context. And when we use that saying, we're jumping to the end point and looking at the extreme needs, the needs that gotta be met. But there are a whole bunch that are short of that, yeah, you can put aside for your partner's well-being.
And we would like to welcome Susan to the polyweekly Playmates, who joined at the mid-level, supporting us on a subscription basis every month. Thank you, Susan, and welcome.
Thank you, Susan.
And thanks to all our polyweekly Playmates for their generous donations this month. We are a free resource. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people navigate their introduction to and continued success with polyamory. Your donations help keep the podcast free for everybody, both inside and outside the community. If you have questions, comments, or feedback, like our friend Mike, call 802-505-POLY and leave a message under 3 minutes, or you can email polyweekly@gmail.com. If you have anything that requires negotiation or signing, then email lustyguy@polyweekly.com. That's to book us, bring us to a show, anything like that. You can also find the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/polyweekly. On Twitter, @polyweekly, I'm at @cunningminx, and basically those IDs elsewhere on the internet. Thanks for listening, And remember,
it's not all about the sex.